Carbon matters because it's one way we can absolutely get our arms around the environmental issues that we all challenge.
Carbon matters because if you plan to still be in business in the next 10 years, someone is going to make a question about carbon, and you better know what to answer it.
Carbon matters because we're already using up 1.5 planets. How much more clarity do we need?
Carbon matters because it's no longer business as usual. And what's been really, really interesting and inspiring for me is there isn't a plan B. Business is changing. That paradigm shift that we're expecting, the process has started. We've heard about legislation, taxation, we've heard what the big boys are doing, we've heard about all sorts of different protocols to report on carbon. We're at the start of the process. I can remember when DOS came in, Direct Operating System, and it was a nightmare to use a computer, and then Microsoft developed this Windows-based thing. We could use a mouse and it all became much easier. So I want businesses to recognise there's a great opportunity here, and they need to grasp that. And for Cornwall, we're ahead of the game already.
There is a lot of misdirection of attention for you to look out for in the world of carbon.
Carbon metrics are all about having good enough management information that you can make sensible decisions about how to manage the carbon. So it's not about getting the minutiae right down to the third decimal place, it's about getting a good enough map of the terrain that you can be broadly sensible in the way you take on the big issues. And it's about picking off 2 or 3 big things rather than a whole handful of tiny things.
We need to have sustainable commitment. When we started several years ago looking at our particular carbon journey, we could find very little interest from the government bodies, people like DEFRA, people like the DTI. Carbon wasn't on the agenda. Over the past few years, it's become on the agenda, and now we're being swamped with regulations and legislation and new initiatives, and that's becoming a burden in itself for companies that simply want to make their products and businesses environmentally more sustainable.
A barrier to full and widespread engagement with the issue through healthcare organisations is a lack of understanding.
To actually engage with confidence with whether it be with suppliers or chief executives, directors of finance on the issue, they really need to have a much stronger grasp of some of the terminology, some of the core principles, and also some of the techniques on how to manage carbon, so they can not only make the business case for taking action but also articulate what some of that action might look like.
No one really knows what to do because it is all so new. We are already aware of businesses that the reason why they got contracts for their buyers and their customers and their clients was because they were doing stuff on carbon. So it's pretty easy. If I'm buying stuff, if I'm representing a big organization, I'm buying stuff, and I have 2 companies providing the same service, and actually one can tell me how it's going to help me reduce my carbon footprint with a similar kind of product, reasonable approximate price, I know which one I'll choose.
Imagine the biggest big thing you can imagine. Okay, we'll start thinking about your customers and the products that you sell, products and services you sell to your customers, and how can you actually make those more efficient and lower carbon. So that can be anything from deliveries to the energy that you use in the manufacturing process. Think hard about how you can reduce those things and tell your customers about it.
Quite a lot to take away and quite a lot to think about.
It's a refresher course for me on looking into what my business has to do for the future.
I think I take back a bit of fresh invigoration to what we're doing.
I think any delegate leaving Eden shouldn't be hung up on carbon literacy or the specifics of the kind of things that have been discussed. It ought to be to get themselves a glass of wine and think, if they were reimagining starting afresh, what baggage would they leave at the door as they imagined a future that would be a great way to work, that would be great for where they live, and would actually make them want to get up in the morning.